Well, good afternoon and welcome to Ashland Place. My name is Kristen Wright. I'm one of the pastors here, and I've had the great joy of knowing David and Becky May Hall through a service that happens in here weekly. And I have heard lots of stories about David Martin and Lexi over the years. I didn't have a chance to meet Lexi, but I feel like I know her now through reading the beautiful obituary, seeing her Instagram, reading her blog, and of course through meeting so many of her family and friends here today. It's clear that she lived a life that we would all strive to live, and of course you'll hear more about that as we continue on. Lexi's family would like to thank everybody in attendance today, childhood friends, co-workers who became friends, friends of her sisters, family and David Martin's, her care team. Whether you came from just down the road, across the country, or tuning into the live stream, your presence is a testament to how fiercely Lexi was loved and supported throughout her short but full life. So as we begin together, let's just have a moment of centering prayer. Holy God, we have gathered here today to praise you as we celebrate the life and love of Lexi. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. Grant us grace that in pain we find comfort, in sorrow, hope, and in death, resurrection. Amen.
Thank you for coming, everybody. My name is Sage, and I have been a friend of Lexi's for a decade now, which seems longer. First off, I gotta say that if she could have, Lexi would have reread this and edited it a couple of times. That was the case with their wedding narrative that I did. So this one, hopefully it reads like a final draft. And sorry if it doesn't, Lex. Here's what I know about Alexa Mestas, for sure. She was 5 feet tall, maybe 4'11", but who's to say? This is one of the only fully quantifiable dimensions of her life. You can't make it fit with geometry, and Lexi didn't like math anyway. It wasn't her thing. She filled space more like a sound, and she reads like a movie. So I present to you a collection of clips, rather than a count of some of the places and spaces Lexi shared with friends, and we'll measure it how we can. The length of her life, if you will, started with her parents, Pete and Lisa Mestas, in Biloxi, Mississippi, September 13th, 1993. She grew up with 5 sisters, Heather, Liana, Raven, Rachel, and Alina. It was a woman-forward household, and Lexi filled her spot and more. She filled the place up. She was generous as she was fierce, and her mother said she was like a little adult from the start. She had no problem saying no and telling her parents exactly what her grievances were, if need be. She'd dance to Cisco songs and cackle if something was funny enough. She was dynamite on the soccer field, and her exuberance became legendary. As big-hearted as she was, Lexi could also open up a space like a bomb does. When 8-year-old Lexi saw a neighborhood boy picking on her little sister, Raven, she neutralized the situation with a body slam and promptly took Raven by the hand and walked off, telling Raven, "We don't play with people who do that." She started lengthening her reach by miles when she was 11, and Hurricane Katrina scattered her family's home in chunks around them. Her parents made a new one in Mobile, Alabama. Lexi filled it up again, and at St. Paul's Episcopal School, where she eventually became junior and senior class president. She thrived. She met the love of her life, David Martin, there. They were inseparable by the age of 14. Right? Early on at St. Paul's, Lexi met Mackenzie Kleiss and found a partner in crime. This is going to be Mackenzie's piece of Lexi, and just to let you guys know, I will be featuring various artists. So this is the first one. It's Mackenzie.
All right, thanks, Sage. So I met Lexi in 6th grade, like Sage said, when most of her family relocated to Mobile after Katrina. We instantly bonded over our love of all things food and became quick besties. We spent weekends in Destin. Lexi was going through her vegan phase then, so we toted a giant cooler full of vegan goodies around. We baked so many things, including about 100 pedophores for our 8th grade dance, and spent so many nights at the Mestas house giggling at our favorite movies. If you knew us then you knew how much we loved Jack Black and his role in Nacho Libre. We could recite every line, and we would laugh until our bellies hurt, no matter how many times we watched it. We always said she was the Nacho to my Steven. The last time I visited her and David Martin at their house here in town, we watched Nacho Libre, made nachos, and played on the zip line like we were kids. It really filled my heart with so much joy. But back to high school. Lex was the first to get her license, and boy, did we take advantage. For her 16th birthday, we planned a skating party, and we thought we were so cool because she could drive us ourselves to the party. I'm not sure what the theme was, but somehow she talked me into wearing a flame-covered leotard, and her mom, Lisa, teased my hair. My leotard also had a tail attached to it that somehow came off during the party, so in true Lexi fashion, she spent the rest of the evening waving the tail around her head while on the skating floor. We spent so many nights and afternoons in her Volvo. Nowhere to go, we would just ride around Mobile and play Lady Gaga as loud as we could. I still have the Lady Gaga Born This Way CD that she burned for me. We also had a weekly tradition of attending a Zumba class. After we would go to Zumba, we would go to Moe's for the largest queso that we could find, and then go back to Lexi's to watch the newest episode of Pretty Little Liars for our PLL parties. Sometimes our gym sessions also included us coming home from school, pounding a tray of hot pizza rolls, and then going to hit the elliptical. I'm not really sure why we thought that would be a great idea. Our love for cooking took us to sign up for French class together with Dr. Brousseau. We had lots of laughs in that class and would get in lots of trouble because we said everything with a Nacho Libre accent. We would talk about how one day we were going to move to France, own a little cottage with a bunch of sheep, and live out our lives eating all the cheese we could get our hands on. Any party we threw was centered around food, and I think it's safe for me to say that that still would hold true to this day. A lot of big memories with her and Dave Martin are centered around Fowl River. We loved it down there, lots of tubing on the river, eating pizzas from Greer's, and pounding pounds of boiled peanuts. Last summer, we spent the day out there playing in the water just like we used to. We pulled crabs from the river to cook for dinner and ate on the porch watching the sunset. It's a day that's cemented in my memory forever. Lexi was unapologetically her, and that was something I admired so much about her. So evident when she ran for senior class president and wanted to win on her own terms. She had her own voice, and she wanted everyone to hear it. I think she succeeded in that with every aspect of her life. She was such a fierce friend, and I hold every memory with her so close to my heart. Lila's Legs.
After high school, Lexi and David Martin went to Loyola University, New Orleans. Go Wolfpack. Lexi widened her space and scope, finding even more friends, a few of which now consider themselves family. She seemed to fill 5 places at any given time as an exemplary student, in homeless outreach, in her relentless pursuit of superior food, and superior was an interpretive term, right? It ran the gamut. When I say superior food, the range is from deep fried chicken livers, from Magnolia Discount, from a local hole in the wall, to oysters that she shucked herself and served with homemade gremolata, in her 20s, no less. She could make a tiny one-room apartment on Carrollton into a ballroom, or an experimental gastropub, or a Lisa Frank-themed birthday bash with rainbow cheetah print covering every nook and cranny of the aging interior. Lexi and David Martin went to India for several months, and her love of food and people began to articulate itself into a beautiful and unique career trajectory. In our senior year at Loyola, Lexi married David Martin, in a beautiful ceremony at a historic hotel on St. Charles. And the two soulmates put onto legal papers what we had all known for a long time. I'm going to go off script here for a second because I had to bring in another little anecdote about Lexi. So this one's from me. And it took place at the end of our first semester in freshman year. And to me, it goes to show just how well Lexi could advocate for the people around her. We were in a group project. It was a pretty big deal. It was a policy briefing on homelessness, or excuse me, on recidivism in prisons in New Orleans. And Lexi did, of course, I probably am going to say 60% of the work. I did about 30, and the other two did about 10. Lexi probably would have said like 1 or 2%. And she was not stoked about that, of course. It was going to be a group grade, and we knew going into it by the end that we were going to get a B. That wasn't cool. That wasn't cool with Lexi. And I had asked the professor, hey, are we all going to get the same grade? And he said, absolutely. And he made it a point to tell everybody, this is a group project, it's a group grade, you're only going to perform as well as your weakest performer. And Lexi didn't accept. And on the day that we were supposed to present what we had graded, she went into this a little bit intimidating professor at Dr. Burns' office, and she said, wait here to me. And I did, and I was sweating more than usual. And like 3 or 4 minutes later, she came back out, and I could see just before she left her doing her famous Lexi stance, which was a power stance. It was just power. And when she turned around and came back out and sat down next to me, she just put her hand on my knee and said, you and I got A's. and we did. We did. It was incredible. But yeah. After Loyola, Lexi spilled around the globe again, at this point like lines of latitude and longitude. This time it was to Rome. At the American University, she earned a master's degree in sustainable food studies. She ate prosciutto on farms. She sat with the people who made it. Excuse me. She wrote about them. She advocated for them too. And in the midst of her ever-widening human presence, Lexi made time also for quiet and for comfort. In a sliver of an apartment in Trastevere, she found spaces for a washer, a clothing rack, a kitchen, and a bed. And she even found room for old David Martin, as they seem to always pull off. And Lexi would have to abdicate again, this time for herself. I remember one particular time, Dimar pushed a cabinet too close to her bedside so she couldn't get in how she wanted to. And she said, Dimar, who do you think I am, Flat Stanley? And it was resolved shortly thereafter. Lexi could open up a space like when someone tells you the drinks are complimentary. I went with them to Sicily during that same visit, and at a market there in Palermo, where on my own I'd be paralyzed by novelty and foreign smells, Lexi took us through the scene like she had painted us in. She gave us names for smells, stories for salted blocks of mullet roe. She cooed over tiny, translucent baby fish. She hefted an octopus and bartered for it. And I felt like we were her sidekicks, let in because we were with Lexi. And that night she cooked that octopus in several steps, like she had owned it from the start, and that was the way it was done. In her program at the university, Lexi found another big personality in Dizzy Dalton. Dizzy's segment, featuring Dizzy, will be a video. Dizzy's not with us currently, but we're going to cue that up for you. So, screens.
I first met Lexi when we were on a master's course. I had arrived in Rome at the very last minute, looked around past that first morning. Any of these people. But then we were short of on day 2, I sat next to Lexi in what would have been a deathly boring lecture, except that I was sitting next to Lexi. I texted my mum during that class to tell her that I'd been wrong. It wasn't going to be so bad after all. I met the one who Roman food has to offer. Although trying she might, I never did acquire a taste of trying. We went to food markets, ate our weight in gelato, drank copious amounts of wine, and watched Shrek on a weekly basis. It was also here in Rome that Lexi introduced me to gumbo. I never thought I'd move to Rome and discover a love of gumbo, but I never thought I'd meet someone like Lexi either. Probably once a month, I would trot over to her flat with a huge stock pan we had lying on so she could make us a gumbo, which we done on the rooftop. As the day wore on and more wine was drunk, Lexi's southern drawl would become more pronounced. She tried to explain to us again and again how to make gumbo and stop in the room. We never got much beyond here with the instructions to hear what happened next before we all fell out of it. It was gumbo that Lexi made me back in 2018, and she happened to be staying with me around the drink.
Let's give it a second. Okay, this video buffers, we'll get back to it. Strong food themes, though. That was a big one. So after Rome in 2017, Lexi and David Martin went to Philadelphia, where Lexi again found a way to make food and politics a platform for passion.
She joined the Food Corps and later became a community supervisor of Rutgers University's SNAP food program. She taught adults and children alike how to eat nutritiously while on government benefits. She wrote an e-cookbook. She partnered with Google's virtual reality team to assist in teaching, as if her scope of influence couldn't get any wider. Through all of it, Lexi danced through the local foodie scene like it was another job instead of a hobby. During her time in Philly, Lexi met one Madeline Tanis, and the two became fast friends. Now we will be featuring Madeline Tanis.
Thanks, Sage. Hi, everybody. My name is Madeline Tanis, or Maddie, and I had the privilege of knowing Lexi starting in 2017 when she and Dimar moved to the Philadelphia area. My husband Byron and I were living in Princeton at the time, and Lexi and I both worked together in Food Corps and also for Rutgers SNAP Ed. When Dimar first asked me to speak about the precious years that I spent with Lexi, I was honored, and I was really terrified. Terrified because I think it's really difficult to do what we're trying to do here in so many ways. One way that it's difficult is that it's just not easy to summarize someone's life. We all know that Lexi is much more than what we can actually share today. That being said, there are countless things that I could say about Lexi up here, and I could stand here for hours. That being said, what I am going to share is 3 things that I know to be true about Lexi and the time that I got to spend with her. Number 1, Lexi had a superhuman level of self-awareness, if you haven't figured that out already. Lexi knew who she was, what she wanted, and she had a seemingly unlimited energy to be herself. Part of this self-awareness was that she had a wonderfully developed sense of humor. When I first met Lexi, within hours, I knew that she knew everything about Nicolas Cage, his career, his connection to Sofia Coppola and the Coppola family, which months later would evolve into celebrating Lexi's birthday with a Nicolas Cage-themed birthday party. I could say countless things about Lexi's humor. Shrek, her entire social media presence. If there was ever an obscure offbeat meme, I knew I could send it to Lexi and she would laugh, and vice versa. Not to mention the tiny hands. So you may be wondering what I'm talking about, and I'll show you all. So for whatever reason, our friend group in Philly decided to incorporate tiny hand culture into everything that we did. So whether it was a party, a picture, a meal, or really just some way to make people feel slightly uncomfortable, we would try to incorporate tiny hands to the extent that we even had tiny hands for our tiny hands. I will be wearing this for the rest of this. Her self-awareness wasn't just regarding her humor, but also in that what she brought out in those around her. Lexi showed up as herself and knew her worth and expected you to show up as your full self as well. If there were times when I was feeling discouraged or not confident, by example and by words, Lexi would always lead me out of that. And she gifted everyone that she knew with that gift as well. Because she was fully herself, others could be as well. The second thing I know true to be about Lexi is that she was acutely aware, before she knew anything about her diagnosis, that life was short, and she wanted to make the most of it. She knew what she had time for, and she knew what she simply did not have time for. Earlier this morning, I had the opportunity to sit down with our close friend Ani and reminisce about our times together. And Ani said, Lexi literally encapsulated what it meant to seize the day. We worked together, and Lexi was easily the most prolific employee out of all of us. Whether it was advocating for healthier food in New Jersey public schools, or leading cooking classes, or leading a thriving social media food presence, she got it done. I believe this is in part because one of the things that Lexi simply did not have time for was poor leadership. If she found that something wasn't working or wasn't getting done, she would step right up and do it herself. At the advent of COVID, she single-handedly organized almost 20 of her food colleagues to produce a cookbook that was designed from scratch by her, focusing on shelf-stable recipes when many of us were unsure if it was safe to go to the grocery store. She did all of this while most employers were still figuring out how to organize a Zoom call. Can I take this off? Cool, let's do that. The last thing I want to share about Lexi is that she had a very distinct physical presence. When she came into a room, you knew Lexi was there. She was bright eyes, she was bright-eyed, she had an amazing laugh, a gorgeous smile, and she would use it without timidity. Always had a way of incorporating her personality in what she wore, whether it was perfectly executed Halloween costumes or a smart work outfit. She also gave the best hugs and wasn't afraid to grab your arm while you were laughing or rub your back. One of my favorite times with Lexi is sitting on the couch watching funny show like Broad City or Golden Girls and just giggling together. If Lexi was around, you knew she was there, and it was great. When I wrote these things about Lexi, it was difficult to write in the past tense. Not just because of Lexi's death, but because despite her passing, I do not feel like we've stopped being friends. I do not get to giggle at memes with Lexi anymore. I don't get to hug her or drink a good cocktail with her or go to one of her parties or FaceTime her about a tough work situation. While I don't get to hug Lexi anymore, I still feel her. I feel her here in my heart, and it hurts, but it's also a reminder that she is still very much here and always will be, and no matter what, we'll always be friends.
This brings us to early 2021, when, as we have already heard now, cancer found its way into the foreground of Lexi's space. She was diagnosed with low-grade serous ovarian cancer, which disproportionately affects young women. And of course, Lexi bit back with a vengeance. In fact, it was due to another fierce woman, Dr. Katie Lakritz, I hope I'm saying that correctly, that the cancer was found at all. The abdominal pain that had visited her intermittently for years now had a name, and it became yet another place where Lexi could stand up and speak out. Through multiple intensive surgeries, chemotherapy, and a changing relationship with her body, Lexi led many others into the fight against cancer and the struggle to bring this rare, often medically overlooked subtype into the light of public conscious. She raised nearly $100,000 in donations toward furthering research into treatments. She met Congress people over it and spoke with the voice she's had since she was that little adult back in Biloxi. As she does, Lexi made space and made others make space for a group of people who needed it. And she opened up the conversation on ovarian cancer, once again, like a bomb. While working for the low-grade Ceres nonprofit known as STAR, Lexi discovered a fellow stick of dynamite in Nicole Andrews. This brings me to Nicole's section. Perfect. My hand
Thank you, Sage. As Sage said, I am Nicole Andrews. Lexi and I met because we were both diagnosed with low-grade serous ovarian cancer, but became friends, I think, by choice. Maybe because we both wanted to have some control of our disease, and we wanted control over treatment options, but most likely because we understood each other's path and mindset, enjoyed humor, and shared a determination to get things done. It's a rarity to get to hug somebody that has your same diagnosis if you have low-grade serous ovarian cancer, because we're spread all around and there's not a lot of us. But I was fortunate enough not to only hug Lexi, but as I able to spend face-to-face time with Lexi and David Martin at my house in Houston, and when I was in New York City. I got to see both of them as well as Lisa. Because of Lexi's amazing fundraising efforts and strong belief in its mission, I know most of you have heard, as Sage mentioned, of Star Ovarian Cancer Foundation. Currently, I serve as chair of the nonprofit, which is the only nonprofit in this country that solely funds research for low-grade serous ovarian cancer, or as we say, LGSOC. I want to share with you the amazing impact Lexi had on the LGSOC community. For any of you who followed her on social media, you know that Lexi was an amazing advocate for ovarian cancer awareness and an unparalleled fundraiser for STAR. She was savvy on social media, using hilarious videos to educate about ovarian cancer and also the injustice of a disease with little funding and treatments, and disproportionately something that affects young women. As a small example of Lexi's ability in this arena, a month before she left us, after having taken a break from social media for quite some time, Lexi posted a fundraiser on her account in honor of World Ovarian Cancer Day. And in Lexi fashion, she doubled her set fundraising goal. That was Lexi. Low-grade serous ovarian cancer is a frightening diagnosis to receive. It's a rare ovarian cancer, so we have limited treatment options. We have little funding designated for research and fewer research studies than general ovarian cancer. STAR's mission is to change these things, and Lexi jumped right in, just as everyone mentioned she would. She did. She was set on being part of the change that we're trying to make. In fact, as was mentioned, since her diagnosis, in 2 years, she raised $100,000 for low-grade serous ovarian cancer research. However, not only in fundraising did Lexi make a tremendous difference, some may argue, more importantly, Lexi impacted thousands of LGSOC individuals in personal ways, and this was more remarkable. So I thought I would come today and share with you comments from our LGSOC community. They start with, Lexi was fierce and such a driving force in advocating for a cure. When I was diagnosed, she was the first person I found. She made me feel not alone. Lexi gave me hope, inspiration, encouragement, and a good dose of laughter and, F word, cancer energy. Her sense of humor and sweetness brought me joy. Lexi really made me smile at a time I had very little to smile about. Her dedication to fundraising was sincerely inspirational. Lexi was a light for me when I was in a dark place, trying to understand the ins and outs of ovarian cancer. Lexi changed the way I viewed life from just one conversation. Lexi was a fierce human sparkler radiating joy and illumination. I was in awe of the pluck and courage she radiated via her post and tireless dedication to ovarian cancer research. Lexi was such a wonderful and generous spirit who always took the time to chat and support others. Lexi was such an advocate for all women and helped me share my story. Why couldn't we find a cure faster? Lexi used her wit to challenge people. You can give up or you can keep going. Lexi chose to keep fighting no matter what, and this spirit was an example to all. One woman wrote, "You've left an unforgettable legacy." Others expressed their views on her work with, "Her work is an inspiration to the LGSOC community, and I hope her family takes some comfort in knowing how many people she helped." And thank you, Lexi, for all you've done. What you've started will grow, and hopefully one day save many lives. This disease is and has hit a lot of us. It's a rotten disease, live-free and disease-free, but mostly pain-free. Finally, Lexi posted about a year ago with a question written on her post slide asking, "How long will you be fundraising for low-grade serous ovarian cancer?" With that special Lexi smirk and that twinkle and determination that she has in her eye, her response with audio was hours, days, months, years, decades. Lexi, from me personally and from all of us in the LGSOC community, especially Star Ovarian Cancer, our promise to you and to your family, and in response to that question, is as long as it takes for us to find a cure. Thank you.
I realized I haven't thanked in front of everybody these contributing artists, but they made it really possible for all of us to kind of come up with all of these stories together, because it's a little tough sometimes. So I thank all of my readers. So Lexi's legend continued to grow, wider and longer than any cancer. After chemo, she and David Martin moved back to Mobile into a beautiful old house in Midtown and made it a home, completed by their faithful old service dog, Valentino. He's a good boy. She worked full-time for Visit Mobile, and she found peace in the waters of the Foul River at the Mayhall family home. She visited Hawaii, that's me, where she attended a surf camp for young adults with cancer in Maui, and even got up on her board, which is no small feat. I can attest to that. That's never done that myself. And like only Lexi can, she inhabited two zones at once, the fight for life and the campaign to enjoy every bit of her own and others' vibrant worlds. A year after moving to Mobile, Lexi and David Martin achieved their dream of living in New York City, and Lexi whirled around the legendary food scene once again and discovered a love for Broadway, all while continuing to fundraise and advocate for low-grade serous patients. Soon after their move, her cancer started to affect her lungs and abdomen. Her fight led to yet another crack team of doctors who fought with her as only someone inspired by Lexi can do. And finally, on the morning of June 4th, 2023, Lexi passed away from this big space we all shared with her. She left it ringing like a concert in our ears. Of course, Lexi's still here in her own way, but how can we possibly measure her? The length, one could say, was almost 30 years. The width, as ample as the number of friends at one of her dinner parties, the patients she fought for, the Italians she dined with, and the waters of the Arabian Sea where her soulmate asked her to marry him. The depth, however, is anyone's guess. Some would call it God or the universe. Some would call it greater consciousness or love. And Lexi had these things in spades. The depth for me is something that I hope I never get quite to the bottom of, and I'm confident I never will. I know for sure that Lexi is radiating through all of us, watching us like the movies we all are, and leafing through the screenplays like the director she's always been. And I have no doubt that wherever she is, Lexi has notes for all of us. We love you, Lex.
Well, thank you to Sage and to everyone who shared today, everyone who has been here to witness to the life, the love, and the legacy of Lexi. The family, again, wants to thank you for being here, either from down the road, across the country, or tuning in through the live stream. Before you go, the table directly in the middle of the room has a space where you can write down your memory of Lexi, and I know the family would love for you to do that. There's also still a lot of food in the back. There's one of Lexi's mocktail recipes, so please continue to fellowship and share these stories with one another. So receive now this blessing. May you go from this time and this space in the light of the one who brings comfort, rest, and peace. Go in joy. Amen.